Battle of Stalingrad. I first read a book about the Battle of Stalingrad, Second World War, when I was 16 years old, when I chanced upon a book, second-hand book, being sold on the sidewalk in Bombay, when I was returning from workshop to my college, marine engineering training. And there used to be a short walk from the naval dockyard where I was doing apprenticeship for my college skills, develop skills on engineering practices. So I used to go to the naval dockyard where navy ships were being repaired, and I used to take part in cleaning valves, cleaning engine parts, and fine tuning and so on. So, and that is 2 days a week, and rest of the 5 days was in my college on other training. So I used to walk back from the naval dockyard to the station, railway station, which took me to my college. And this short walk was to the downtown Bombay. And I used to look at the shops, and there were a lot of second-hand books those days being sold on the sidewalk, not inside it. I mean, people used to, bring a box of old books and open up a mat on the sidewalk, thin mat, and keep some 20-30 interesting books and see what sells, and then arrange accordingly. And they were very cheap because they were second hand. So I first read my book on Stalingrad, Battle of Stalingrad there. I had no idea before that how vicious or how about this battle at all. And the year was 1968 and 1966, and it was written. It was an English book written by an American. I don't remember his name, and I remember what was written on the backside of that book as a description of what the book was about. And it said that more people lost their lives in the Battle of Stalingrad than American soldiers that lost their life in the War of Independence, in the Civil War, in their First World War, in their Second World War, in their Vietnam War and Korean War, all put together. And Vietnam War was just starting. Korean War was over. So Americans had lost much less in all their wars together than the people who lost their life in a single city, Stalingrad. So that caught my attention. I did not know there was such a battle, and literally the hair stood up in my neck. I was pretty innocent that day, 16-year-old, and that was my first reading. And subsequently, I got hooked on the Battle of Stalingrad, on all the battles of the Eastern Front on Second World War, and as days passed, more information came public. Originally, it was the official version only available, and Russia, Soviet Union had not been clean in their reporting of the event. Some data they kept hidden for whatever reason. Soviet Union was Soviet Union, and the other side who were able to give information was the Germans. These are the two major parties. All others were like Americans or anybody else who was not directly involved. He had to take information from translated information from others. So the Germans also did not have all the information. They had some information from the German side, but not from the other. So anyway, more information as years passed, more information started coming. Also another thing, the Germans, the 6th Army capitulated, got destroyed, and most people who survived were captured by the Russians, and they were sent to prison camps and only a small number returned some years back. Only a small number, and not everyone kept a diary of what all happened, or not everyone was lucid in describing the whole of the battle. So all these things together, information started adding up, apart from the official version, slowly. Then the Russians, there were much more Russians on the that survived, or Russians that had notebooks. They had a good habit of writing day-to-day affairs on a notebook, on their diary, and many of them survived. And there were secret or private messages and not disclosed. But as years passed by and they died, the relatives disclosed those notebooks and made it public. And so anyway, and when the Soviet Union collapsed and present-day Russia came out, many more details have been declassified and made open to public. So the details of the war on the Eastern Front, and especially Stalingrad, kept on adding more material, and more books started coming out, and I got hooked on it, and I bought again and again the Russian version, the German version, the American, the British, all these ones. And right now I am on another version that I am about to buy. It is based out of a connection of a collection of notes by a surviving member. In 2004, he talked to the American new writer Alex Hyde White, and this is Mansour Abdullin. It is good to know that Russians have a large percentage of Muslims in Russia, but they are not like any other Muslim. They are not like Arab Muslims or Indian Muslims or Indonesian Muslims. They are Slavic Muslims, and they're a different breed. Anyway, so my reason for reading these books is not just the Battle of Stalingrad. It is to understand Russians. Russia is not a monolithic country. It is a very, very complex, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic, multi-religious nation, and social society, different societies and all that. And a few things that stands apart for Russia. One is Russia has never ever been colonized, never, and it is a country of the original inhabitants, not like USA, which is, was once habited by Red Indians or First Nation Indians, and now they are almost dead, almost finished, and they lost their language, they lost their culture, they lost their everything, and colonized by Europeans. It is not like Russia is not like that. Russia is very unique because in their long history, Russia has been invaded repeatedly, from the Genghis Khan to Teutonic Knights to Napoleon to First World War and the Second World. They have been invaded repeatedly, and they have thrown off the invader every time after great cost, especially the Second World War, a great cost. But they have thrown them back. That means although the nation is heterogeneous, different kind of people, different language, different culture, different religion, different everything, ethnicity, but they have always come together in defense of Mother Russia. Second World War was a victory of not communist, Soviet or communist Russia, but just Russia, Mother Russia. So they did not do it to preserve communism, they did it to preserve Russia, the essence of Russia. And this is what is happening now in the Ukraine war, and it is become important for me to dig back into the Russian history to get all angles of it. And that is my fixation, because today Russia holds the key to many of the problems that is happening to the Ukraine war through the collective West, who is trying to dismember Russia for the first time permanently, so that there will be no Russia anymore. There will be only Ukraine and Belarusia, these, that, and different names, but all separate pieces fighting with each other. So the Russian resources can be pillaged. That is another topic. That is, Russia has enormous amount of resources with regard to oil, gas, gold, chromium, everything. And Siberia is another item that has been added to it. You see, Siberia was under permafrost ever since man walked on earth. Ever since man came upon this earth by evolution or whatever else you think, Siberia has been under permafrost and never been explored seriously because it was not possible. It is thawing now. Now it is first time in human history it is thawing. And indications are enormous amount of resources are buried inside that land that has never been touched before. That is virgin resources, and it is coming up on top of what Russia already has. So in some ways, Russian resources, if you add all this together, of any one item like oil or gas or gold or something, is likely to be more than what the rest of the world has put together, all together, because they have been exploiting these resources for 4,000-5,000 years everywhere else, but in Russia. So this is important to understand, because I feel the real reason the war is going on is because the globalists want to capture this resource base and own it. They had almost succeeded in doing that in the first 10 years of new Russia, that means post-Soviet Russia, through Yeltsin. But that came to a stop when Vladimir Putin came to power, and now it has become an existential threat, because the West, without this resource base, without the chance of extending its hegemony over the world for the next couple of centuries, there is nothing left. They have exploited everything else that can be exploited around the world. So this is an existential threat for both the rest of the West and for Russia. And now the Russians have finally understood why they are being targeted through Ukraine. This is an existential threat. So now Russians believe that if they lose, they must win the Ukraine war, must win, because if they don't win, there will be no Russia left. And as a result, all these ethnic groups, whether it is Muslim, whether it is Siberian, whether it is Asian, whether it is European, whatever, all these Russians have gotten together to safeguard and preserve Russia. And that is why Putin is having over 85% approval rating. Not because everybody likes to have him there, but he is the man in charge right now, and Russia is in unbelievable crisis, and therefore 85% are behind him, and Russia is doing great. Russian economy is doing great. Russian capability of the infrastructure and all that, Russian economy, civilian economy is doing great. Its military economy is doing great. So to understand all this, to wrap my head around all this, I'm reading more and more. There is another angle on Russia, which is for India, for me, different than all other countries, and that is the new realization, new because I did not know this before, is that most of Russians share something common with most of Indians. Can you guess what? I did not know this, and I was told by a Russian a Russian living in Canada who is thinking of moving back to Russia. He said that Tony, we don't forget that we share a common Vedic root, and that surprised me. I know what is Vedic root from India, but I did not know Russians shared a common Vedic root. Why I didn't know that? Because the Western perception is that it's only Western Europeans and Indians share that common root because of the Sanskritic language, which is the mother of all Indian languages, and which has got very close relation with Latin, which is the mother of Western European languages. These two are so closely linked together that the linguists in Europe decided or found out that it must be siblings of a parent language which has not left its trace, because the parent language was at a time when written script was not there, so it was only verbal or only spoken, and that has disappeared. But the trace, the two siblings are there, of which Sanskrit is the mother of all Indian languages, and Latin is so. This was told to me. This I read about from Western linguists 200 years ago. But the Western linguists, removed the Baltic connection. There was no mention of Baltic nations and languages also having the same root. That they purposefully omitted the Baltic language. I have pondered about it, because I asked my father when I was small that how can West European and Indians have the common root? Well, while there is a big gap in the map in the middle, this Central Asia and Baltic States are missing, and the two parts are disconnected. How is that possible? My father, who is a professor of fine arts, he's dead now, didn't know the answer. He said the Pandit, all the experts are saying so, that must be so. And now I understand. I'm beginning to understand that the Western Europeans had a racial superiority complex even 200 years back, and that is why they omitted the Slavic states. Why I did not know about it? Because Indians are culturally subversive, enslaved by the Western education system. So they learn everything about India's link to the rest of the world through European translation. They did not do any independent research themselves, except now. Now things are beginning to change. But all this time, they just followed the Western interpretation, and that's why I learned in school this common link between Western Europe and India, but missed out. And this Russian gentleman, he is not a scholar, but he reminded me of this thing. And then in Russia, many people told me that there is a common link. Of course, they are not Hindu. They have moved on to become Orthodox church followers, but the Vedic, my perception of Veda and the Vedic culture and the Vedic, so it's a way of life and it's not a religion. So you can be whatever religion you are and still follow that principle. India has moved on to create Hinduism, which anyway I will not dwell on that. So there is another cultural and lifestyle based link, spiritual link between Russians and Indians at a different level before the religions came to earth. It is before Christianity came, Hinduism came, Islam, all this. Even before that there was a spirituality and there was a link created by all this. And this is makes me very interested to learn more about Russia. And all that is now explained to me. I did not practice this talk, so I did not prepare it properly, but I am talking off the heart. this is the reason I am again reading this book, Red Road from Stalingrad. It's a recollection of a Soviet infantryman named Mansur Abdulin and written by Alex Hyde White. He discovered this collection in 2004 when Abdulin was still alive, although he was past 80 years old. He talked to him. He called that number. He called that town where he was supposed to live, and he found that number from the Soviet telephone assistants, and then he called him and explained that he would like to translate. He would like to translate the book and make a audio book about it, unabridged, and got permission for doing that. And now I am reading that audio book, 8 hours and 45 minutes long, which is approximately like a average size paperback, say 2 to 250 pages book. It's not very big book. It's not like an encyclopedia of 1,000 pages, but it's a handy book, and from this Soviet infantryman. And why I am so fixated on Russia, and to understand, I do understand today's war. I explained that before. I do not buy the propaganda from Western countries, but I do understand today that Russia is at the cusp of another crisis, and the world is brought under another crisis because of this huge amount of resources that is now under control of Russia, and the rest of the world would not want to. No, the rest of the world would want to, but the West, the collective West, would not want to trade legally with Russia for these resources. They would like to own it. They would like to, like they do in other countries, like in Middle East and other places. They own the resources and they give the country back few cents for the dollar that they remove from the resource. So that is the rate at which Russia is to be pillaged, and if they don't agree, then there is going to be a violent war, and Ukraine is being used for that. And it is not just Russia's existential threat; it is also the collective West existential threat, because the West cannot survive in its lifestyle without this. I mean, America and Canada also. But let's say America, they constitute 5% of the population, but they consume 25% of the resources. This is absurd, but this is going on for a long time, and now it is coming to a stop because of events which have been triggered by Russia. Putin is doing more things than just fighting in Ukraine, and that is why it is a crisis of civilization that can only end with the annihilation of one system. It is not a simple war, and that is why I am so engrossed. I think I talked enough. Thank you.